You've probably never heard a sermon on this. A fight so intense that even heaven didn't send an army, just one angel. A death so sacred that God personally took care of the burial. And a moment so mysterious only one verse in the Bible dares to mention it. Why would Satan, the Prince of Darkness himself, appear in person at a prophet's grave? This isn't just about Moses. This is about spiritual warfare, hidden legacy, and what it means to truly belong to God, even after death. We all love dramatic scenes where angels come crashing down with flaming swords and demons scatter. But this story, this one is quiet. It's buried in a single sentence from Jude 1:9. Blink and you'll miss it. But what that single verse implies, it's earth-shaking. So let me ask you, if you passed away today, would Satan show up to your grave? That might sound ridiculous, but in this video you're going to learn why the enemy doesn't just fight your life. He fights your legacy. And in the story of Moses, we uncover a spiritual war that continues today for your mind, your body, and your destiny. And no, this isn't fiction. The Bible records a real chilling standoff between two eternal powers, Lucifer, the rebellious prince, and Michael, the archangel, who doesn't negotiate. And what was it all about? A corpse. But not just any corpse. Moses, the man who walked with God, who failed publicly, who saw heaven's glory, and who even in death terrified the devil. Today we're not just retelling a story. We're digging into what the church rarely explains: why Satan wanted Moses' body, what it reveals about spiritual authority, and why this ancient conflict still applies to you today. So get comfortable, because by the end of this video you'll see the spiritual battlefield with new eyes, and you'll understand just how fiercely God guards what belongs to him. Let's begin with something most believers never catch. Jude 1:9 says this, "But Michael the archangel, when he disputed with the devil and argued about the body of Moses, did not dare pronounce against him a railing judgment, but said, 'The Lord rebuke you.'" That's it, that's the whole verse. No details, no drama, no backstory. Just a heavenly standoff buried in one sentence. Most people skip past it. But if you stop and think about it, this isn't just a theological footnote, it's a bombshell. Why would Satan care about Moses' body? Why would Michael intervene personally? And what does the Lord rebuke you actually mean in a scene like this? To understand this, we need to go back. Not just to Moses' death, but to his life, his failures, his calling, and his position in God's redemptive plan. Because Satan doesn't show up for just anyone. Deuteronomy 34 tells us that Moses died on Mount Nebo after God showed him the promised land, a land he wasn't allowed to enter. You'd expect a prophet of that magnitude to have a glorious funeral, maybe a public shrine or some monument for Israel to remember him. Instead, God buried him in secret. No man saw it. No one knows where it happened. To this day, the location of Moses' grave remains unknown. And here's where it gets interesting. This wasn't just an act of privacy, it was protection. God was hiding something not out of fear, but out of purpose. Now let's pause and add some modern perspective. Imagine a beloved national figure passed away today, someone like Martin Luther King Jr. or Billy Graham, and the government said, "We're going to bury them ourselves in a location no one will ever find." People would lose their minds. But in Moses' case, this wasn't about scandal, it was about spiritual security. And Satan knew that, because Satan doesn't need to win a war to cause damage. He just needs an opportunity to corrupt. And Moses, even in death, was still a threat. This is where things get chilling. Satan didn't want Moses' body to mourn it. He wanted to use it. In ancient cultures, especially among Israel's neighbors, it was common to create idols and worship relics. If Satan could get his hands on Moses' corpse, he could have turned it into a religious symbol. Imagine the chaos: Israelites building shrines to the body, praying to it, idolizing the man instead of the God he served. That's the kind of worship Satan thrives on, distorted, misdirected, and hollow. But it goes deeper. What if Satan's goal wasn't just idolatry? What if he believed that Moses' body, touched by divine glory, still held power? You see, Moses had been in the very presence of God. His face had literally shone with divine light. Even after death, maybe Satan feared some lingering spiritual imprint, something he could exploit, corrupt, or manipulate. And here's the sobering truth: the devil is still doing this today. He's still trying to twist holy things. Still trying to hijack your calling, your reputation, your body, even your failures, and use them for mockery. Now here's the part that really flips expectations. In most people's minds, when angels fight demons, it's a dramatic cinematic showdown. Lightning bolts, flaming swords, celestial explosions. But when Michael showed up, he didn't throw a single punch. He didn't draw a weapon. He didn't even engage in argument. He simply said, "The Lord rebuke you." That's it. One line, one sentence, game over. Why? Because spiritual battles aren't won with noise. They're won with authority. Michael didn't speak in his own name, he invoked the name of the Lord. And that's what shattered Lucifer's claim. Let me give you a real-world example. Have you ever been in a situation where someone tried to intimidate you, maybe at work, in court, or even online? But the moment you brought up legal backing or official authority, they backed down. That's what this moment was. Michael wasn't there to bicker with Satan. He was there to enforce a decree. And that's a powerful lesson for anyone fighting spiritual battles. You don't need to argue with the enemy. You don't need to relive your mistakes or justify your past. When the enemy comes knocking, you don't respond with excuses, you respond with authority. The Lord rebuke you isn't a cute phrase, it's a courtroom order. And in that moment, Satan had no appeal, no counter-argument, no loophole. The case was closed. Here's something no one tells you: Satan didn't come for Moses when he was alive. He came after he was gone. Why? Because Moses' greatest influence didn't happen while he was breathing. It happened after he died. You see, some legacies don't start until after your last breath. And Satan knows that. If he can't destroy your calling while you're alive, he'll try to twist your memory when you're gone. Have you ever noticed how quickly public figures are misrepresented after death? People take their quotes out of context. They rewrite their beliefs. They turn their struggles into gossip. That's not new, that's ancient. Satan wanted to take Moses' story, a man who failed publicly but still walked with God, and turn it into a mockery. Imagine what would have happened if Satan succeeded. Instead of remembering Moses as the lawgiver, Israel might have turned his grave into a temple. They may have worshipped the man, not the message. They might have built rituals around his body, missing the God he served. And Satan thrives on that kind of distortion, because he's not just a liar, he's a saboteur of meaning. But God didn't allow it, because God isn't just the author of your life, he's the defender of your story. And that brings us to a sobering truth: you might never see the full impact of your obedience, but God will guard it even after you're gone. Let's talk about Michael for a second. We tend to think of angels as soft, glowing beings with harps and halos. But Michael is different. In Scripture, he shows up in the worst, most dangerous spiritual conflicts, when heaven is directly threatened. In Daniel 10, Michael shows up to help another angel who was blocked by demonic opposition for 21 days. In Revelation 12, he's the one who leads the battle against the dragon Satan himself. He's not an angel of comfort, he's an angel of enforcement. Think of Michael as a spiritual SWAT team, heaven's frontline responder, when rebellion crosses the line. And yet, even in all his power, Michael doesn't act independently. He doesn't show up with opinions, he shows up with orders. He knows the hierarchy, he obeys the throne. And that's why he's terrifying to the enemy, because he can't be bribed, manipulated, or distracted. When God says protect this, Michael does it, without hesitation, without compromise. It was no accident that Michael was the one sent to guard Moses' body. It wasn't a gentle burial, it was a declaration of war. Because when God says this is mine, not even hell can touch it. And that's true for you too. One of the most overlooked reasons Satan wanted Moses' body is actually future-oriented. Moses wasn't just a historical figure, he was a prophetic one. Hundreds of years after his death, Moses reappears in one of the most sacred scenes in the New Testament, the Transfiguration. On that mountain, Jesus stands radiant in divine glory, and beside him are two figures, Elijah and Moses. Not symbolically, not metaphorically, but really. Moses was brought back to appear beside Christ in a moment that bridged the law and the Messiah. That moment had been protected centuries earlier by God, by Michael, and by a divine rebuke. Now imagine if Satan had succeeded in corrupting the body of Moses. Imagine the Transfiguration scene, but instead of reverent glory, the image of Moses had been desecrated, idolized, or forgotten. This wasn't just a battle for a corpse, it was a battle for continuity. God was preserving a piece of prophecy, a puzzle piece that would later connect Moses to Jesus, the law, to grace the old covenant to the new. And this tells us something crucial. Your story doesn't end when you think it does. Sometimes the part you think is over is just a setup for something God plans to fulfill years, even centuries down the line. Your obedience today might show up in someone else's miracle tomorrow. There's another dimension to this that hits close to home. Lucifer had no legal right to Moses' body. God had claimed it. Michael was sent to protect it. The burial was sacred. And yet, Satan showed up anyway. That's how he works. He's not fair. He's not lawful. He's not respectful of boundaries. Even today, he trespasses into areas he no longer owns: your mind, your past, your future. You may have already been forgiven, redeemed, and restored, but he'll still whisper lies about your past. You failed. You're disqualified. You don't deserve to be used. Sound familiar? This is where a lot of believers get stuck. We assume that because Satan shows up, maybe we did something wrong. Maybe we're not really free. But listen, Satan doesn't show up because you're failing. He shows up because you're dangerous. He comes after the things God already claimed, the very places that carry weight, legacy, and destiny. Moses was already buried by God, but the enemy still tried to make a claim. And what stopped him? Not an argument, not proof, not pleading. A rebuke. The Lord rebuke you. You need to remember that. Because when you're under attack, when your past, your mind, or your purpose is being challenged, your defense isn't in being perfect. It's in being claimed. Let's zoom out and look at the scene from a different angle. Where was Moses during this battle? Gone. His spirit was with God. His body was hidden. He wasn't praying. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't defending himself. And yet, heaven fought for him. That's a beautiful picture of divine protection. There are battles you won't even be awake for, attacks you'll never see, accusations that never reach your ears, and still God defends you. Think about how many times you were spared, protected, or preserved without even realizing it. How many spiritual courtroom scenes unfolded in your absence? That toxic relationship that didn't work out. That opportunity you lost that felt like a failure but was actually protection. That door that closed and you still don't understand why. We don't see the full battlefield, but God does. And He's not passive. He sends help. He releases rebukes. He dispatches defenders. Not because you're perfect, but because you're His. Moses wasn't a flawless man. He made serious mistakes, murder, disobedience, anger. But God buried him. God protected him. God had plans for him. And that should give you hope. Because your past doesn't cancel your calling. If Moses can be flawed and still honored, then so can you. One of the most surprising elements in the entire story is this. God cared about Moses' body. In a culture where we often separate the spiritual and the physical, this feels strange. We say things like, "It's just flesh," or "I'm not my body." And yes, your soul is eternal. But don't miss this, your body is still sacred. The Bible says it's a temple of the Holy Spirit. It's not disposable, it's not irrelevant, it's not unspiritual. God created it. Jesus took on one. And when Moses died, God didn't say, "Well, his soul is with me, the rest doesn't matter." No, He buried him, personally. Why? Because even in death, the physical still held purpose. Lucifer wanted to drag Moses' body into shame, into spectacle, into false worship. But God said, "No, this too belongs to me." That should tell you something about how deeply God values you, body and soul. So don't believe the lie that your failures have made you worthless. Don't think your past mistakes make you a liability. If God sent His mightiest warrior to defend a grave, what will He do to protect your living purpose? Let's be honest, Moses was complicated. He wasn't some sanitized saint. He murdered a man. He argued with God. He disobeyed. He let frustration get the best of him. And that's exactly what Satan wanted to use against him. You struck the rock. You disobeyed. You don't deserve a holy burial. Sound familiar? It's the same playbook the enemy uses against you and me. He drags up the past. He makes accusations. He questions your worth. But here's the thing, none of that matters once you've been claimed by God. Satan is obsessed with trying to stain what's been sanctified, because it drives him insane to see a flawed human being covered by grace walking in obedience and still used by God. He hates redemption. He can't touch God, so he goes after God's children. But Michael didn't argue with him. He didn't say Moses was a good man. He didn't say he tried his best. He said, "The Lord rebuke you," because that's all it takes. Not your defense, not your works, just divine authority. That's the weapon you carry too, not your righteousness, but God's claim on your life. There's one final truth that ties all of this together. Lucifer wasn't just attacking Moses, he was attacking what Moses represented. And what did he represent? A flawed man God still used. A lawgiver whose body would one day stand beside Jesus. A human being whose failures didn't cancel his future. A legacy too dangerous for hell to ignore. You see, Satan doesn't just attack people, he attacks what your life will mean for others. That's why this story matters. Because your legacy isn't just about you. It's about your children, your church, your friends, your influence, your ripple effect. That's why the enemy fights so hard. Not to stop your breathing, but to stop your meaning. But when God lays claim to a life, even in death, He defends it. He defended Moses, He'll defend you. Not because you're perfect, but because you're His. So what really happened that day when Lucifer stepped into a silent valley and tried to lay claim to a grave that wasn't his? He got rejected. Not with swords, not with shouting, but with a single sentence, "The Lord rebuke you." That one line held all the authority of heaven. And in that quiet but eternal moment, we saw a glimpse of something bigger. That God does not abandon His own, not in life, not in death, not ever. So here's your reminder. If you feel forgotten, remember Moses. If your past screams too loud, remember Moses. If the enemy tries to rewrite your story, remember Moses. God buried him. God protected him. God brought him back. Because God doesn't just save people, He saves their purpose. Even when the world forgets you, even when hell tries to claim you, even when your failures seem louder than your faith, He still calls you His. And when you belong to Him, even your bones preach truth. Thanks for watching. If this stirred something in your heart, don't keep it to yourself. Like the video, share it with someone who's struggling to believe they still matter. And subscribe for more content like this. The war between light and darkness is not over. It's still unfolding, and you're part of it. So stay watchful, stay grounded, and stay unshakably His.